Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast, the podcast that gives you immediate actions you can take to start seeing life-shifting results now. Hey everybody, welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast. This is Mark Cardone.
And Theron Feidt.
So we are talking today about resilience and adaptability. We're talking about how they're different, how
Yep.
they're both important, and
Right.
how we can, some really easy steps we can put into effect today to help build them.
Sometimes you think of big things that happen that you need to be resilient about and adapt. Um, a tragedy happens in your life, and yes, you do need these skills for that. However, I think getting this mindset down and taking these three steps and working these three steps can help you every day because it's oftentimes the little things that trip us up.
Yeah.
You're walking through a forest and the roots are tripping you. You know, you don't usually, hopefully, don't run into a big branch. You
Yeah.
duck and you can see that coming, but often the roots are hidden. There's leaves over the roots and you trip over there. So that's often what happens in life. It's those little things. Somebody cuts you off in traffic
Yeah.
and sets your whole day off. And so this is good for the big things, of course, but it's also good for the small things.
Yeah, and I love talking about the difference between the two things because I think a lot of us, over the past 5 years have been through, a lot of different things with this,
Yeah,
since COVID shut down and everything else.
right.
Resilience, I like resilience because resilience is really that ability to bounce back, right? It's that
Yep.
ability to, kind of bend like a tree in a storm, right? Bend,
Right.
sway, move, but at the
Right.
end, still stand. To
Right.
have those roots we trip on are also
Hmm.
important, to keep us upright. Um, so I think resilience is important because we have to be able to withstand the storm. We're going to go through it. Things are going to happen in our lives, and the ability to keep going, is important. Adaptability, on the other hand, you know, like if we're constantly in the same storm and we're not changing to withstand it better,
Yeah.
eventually that storm's going to break us.
Right.
So the ability to change course, the ability to grow new skills, the ability to do that, that's really about adaptability and changing, to be a person who's growing.
Right. And you brought up the pandemic, which of course was worldwide. So I think it's a universal idea. It's not just what happened here in America.
Right.
And of course it was worse in some places than others, but overall, I think you had to adapt. So the resilience was the initial thing, like we talked about, but afterwards, the way business is done and the way certain things are done are a little different than they were.
Yeah.
I don't really know of any business that is 100% back to exactly how they were before. Now, their business numbers might be back to where they were, but there's changes they made. They had to adapt to, I always hate the new normal idea.
Yeah.
I'm never really, that never clicked with me. But the idea is, I mean, that concept is adapting,
Yeah.
is adapting. And it's really just a mindset. And for us in our martial arts dojo, because you were part of this, even though there was negatives, there was also positives that came out of it because we made them positive, because we made positive changes, because we made adjustments and we adapted to our conditions. And I think we made a lot of improvements
Yeah.
because of it, right?
And,
And
you know,
that's what
not
adaptability is, or
and
should be.
not only improvements, but I mean things that are in place that number one are definitely improved. They're better for the students, they're better for the population. But now, like if anything like that ever happens again, we have things in place that make us
Yeah, right,
stronger and readier and all those
right.
things. You know what I mean? So, I think a lot of businesses have gone through that, a lot of families went through that.
Sure.
And a lot of people still like we go through this every day, like we hit these these major roadblocks and challenges,
Hmm.
and we
Hmm.
we survive through it, and that's like look, resilience is surviving through it. it's
Right,
it's getting to the other side, and
right.
then hopefully with a good attitude and enthusiasm, and then you figure, how do I adapt, how do I make it better so that next time I'm more prepared and better.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So the first step is reframing your thinking, which typically that's almost the first step all the time with what we're doing, but it really is. It's your mindset, and hopefully these podcasts remind you of this is what I need to do. Oh yeah, this is what I need to focus on. So one simple thing that I really adjusted years ago, and even though you look at it, you say it's semantics, but they work. There's a problem, Mark. We have a problem, or Mark, right? There's a little challenge that we're going through. We have a challenge that we need to overcome. To you, which one sounds better? Which one sounds more positive? The challenge. So I'm not denying that there's something wrong that needs to be fixed, but saying that there's a problem. I have a problem with you, Mark. I think we have a challenge. That
Uh-huh.
definitely sounds way better.
It does.
Again, you think it's semantics, but what it does, it sets your mind and the other person's mind on a more positive frame to work towards a solution versus butting heads.
And we hear this all the time. And this is, I'm sorry, everybody who's listening, this is where my toxic positivity comes in, right? This is where when my kids come to me and they tell me the drama of their day and the thing that's tearing their life apart, my response is always the same, and they hate it. And if they're, I know they're listening, so I always say, great, right? That's great. And then they roll their eyes, and then we talk about it, right?
Yeah,
Like I don't just leave it at that and ignore their problems,
yeah,
but like if you just start with this is great, you'll figure out why it's great. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And this is great for people who are listening. Where we live, there has been massive road construction.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
Anyone who's listening who's local knows this. But literally, like I'll drive my girls to school in the morning. And at one point they're doing like a lot of sewer work.
Hmm.
They were shutting down random roads like they without any notice, and they were all like side roads and back roads. So any given day you would get rerouted, redirected with no real instructions, just a road closed sign. you know
Yeah.
and 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 anyone who drives knows how frustrating that can be when you're trying to get someplace on time you
Right.
know but what I'll say, and there were times when I'm driving and we're 5 minutes late, we're trying to get to school, and I'm frustrated. But then I look back at it and I say, I learned like 14 different ways
Right.
to get to the same place, a
Yeah.
couple of which I like better, even
Right.
though they're a little slower.
Yeah.
But they pass cooler stuff. So,
Hmm.
there's always going to be a mindset shift where
Yeah.
this thing that's awful could actually not be that bad.
Right.
And it's all about adjusting your mindset to really be able to see that.
It truly is. And for those who think, well, this doesn't work, well, you're right. It's not going to work for you because you're different, and
Yeah.
you'll never be better, and you'll
Yeah.
never improve. However, for the rest of us that are like, hey, I tried that and it does work, enjoy that
How,
tip.
how come nobody ever complains about toxically negative people?
Right.
They're
There
everywhere.
are lots of them.
They're everywhere. Um, but so really just to cap that, I think, shifting from that failure mindset to that learning, adapting that mindset it'll just help you long term.
Yeah.
The next step is really about embracing the minimal viable action,
Hmm.
the smallest possible step you can take. And this, when we're talking resilience versus adaptability, I think a lot of times this applies to both,
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
when you're swaying, sometimes just moving your foot an inch, if
Hmm.
you've ever been off balance,
Hmm.
sometimes just moving your arm like a quarter of an inch will help adjust your balance.
Right.
And I
Right.
think understanding how that
Hmm.
small change can
Right.
help
Yeah.
will get your mindset right here.
Yeah, and you have to be okay with the change and the adjustment, right?
Yeah.
You have to make sure that you're right. And I think that's where the first step is the first step because it gets you into a learning mindset. And that allows you to do the second step, like you said, which is that adjustment. And notice what I said, adjustment versus change. That's another word that I try to uh, use differently. So instead of saying we're going to make a big change around here, we're going to make some adjustments.
Hmm.
Big difference in there.
Yeah.
Now the result will be the same. However, the setup and the mindset will be different. And so, but this also creates momentum, and we've talked about this many times on many podcasts. The creation of momentum is the key. So, number two, being taking those small steps is going to get you going. It's going to that momentum also creates um, eagerness, and it creates the want to do more. And oftentimes, that couple minutes that you spend turn into many minutes.
Yeah. And you know, and I think, you know, we often try to we want to solve the whole problem at one time.
Yeah.
You know, and I like when going back to my traffic example, right? You know, I want to be at school at 8 o'clock. And you're jammed up in 20-mile backup traffic.
Right.
Sometimes the goal is then just to get out of the traffic,
Right.
right?
Right.
Or reframe or contact somebody and let them know you'll be late.
Right.
You
Right.
know, because trying to solve the I'm not going to be there on time is a big, like, that's a lot,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
You know, when we went into lockdown during the pandemic, the first goal at the dojo wasn't like, well, let's get everyone back. It was let's get Zoom going so we
Right.
can get people training again because that's
Right.
what we need,
Right.
right? And I think, like, I mean, you think about it, Zoom classes was a very small, like, it was big because we'd never done it, but it was a
Right.
relatively, hindsight, relatively small change,
Yeah.
but really had a huge impact.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
really trying to hone the focus. And for people, because I'm one of these people who tend to go right to panic, because that's what I
Hmm.
do, right? Like when something shifts, I go immediately to panic mode,
Hmm.
and then I have to break it down into smaller pieces.
Hmm.
This is a really helpful step to get you out of overwhelm and out of anxiety. So
Yeah.
so get good at this.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And that moves to step number three is building a support network. And this is important. People in your lives should help you and support you as you should to them. And whether it's coming up with ideas, helping you with a project, helping you get started, making you accountable, all of those things are very useful. So this podcast recording, it's every Tuesday morning, right? Now the time of start might change depending on what's going on in school and session and things. But how often do we miss a Tuesday morning? I think we talked about this a few podcasts ago that we pretty much do 48 to 50 podcasts a year. Now we'll do multiple podcasts within that day, right?
Right.
Like today, this is our second one that we're recording. But my point is we're very consistent. Those times that we do take off, either something came up or it's a holiday, and so we're it's a plan break. So very often, do either of us text each other and say, "Oh, I can't make it today"? How often does that happen?
Rare.
Right? I mean, once or twice a year, and and
Yeah.
and it's not because we overslept. I'm tired, I can't make it today. It's because something that happened with our kids. We have to get our kids ready, or this or that. So my point is that support, because we're committed to each other.
Yeah.
We've been consistent doing this podcast for almost 10 years.
And hence why you record two, because then just in
Right.
case that
Just in case.
contingency, right? Like just in
Yeah.
case we have an episode.
Right.
Um, but like I think that's absolutely right. Is it's surrounding yourself with people who support you, right? Like people who are going to, fly the flag in your parade, encourage you,
Hmm.
keep you accountable, all the things. But I also think it's important to surround yourself with people who know stuff you don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, because I mean, like a lot of times, I mean, I'm doing it right now, right? Like I'm helping somebody rent a house. I've never done that before, but I have
Hmm.
people in my office, who are real good at it, who I can
Hmm.
ask for help, and and that makes them feel good. It teaches me things, right? So, I think surrounding yourself with people who know how to do stuff you don't know how to do
Right.
will help you adapt as those things come up,
Right.
right? Like you can't know everything about
Right.
everything.
Right.
So have a good network of people who know how to do those things where you might not be a perfectionist.
Yeah, and to expand on what you're saying is you don't want to silo yourself with the same type of thinking
Yeah,
and surround yourself with the way you think as well.
yeah,
And you've been around me so long. If somebody gives me on my staff not a challenge, but something like a counterpoint to what I'm saying, you've seen me. I don't get mad. I don't get upset. I don't flex my authority. I listen. I say, okay, that, maybe, yeah. And then oftentimes I realize it's a better idea.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't overreact and think that they're trying to take over. Um, because that having a different point of view really makes a difference and is really helpful. And you've come to me with certain things too that are different. And I always listen. Sometimes I implement them, sometimes I don't.
Yep.
And sometimes it's just timing. So it wasn't a bad idea, it was just a bad time for the idea,
Yeah.
you know.
And sometimes
Um
it's a bad idea. I've had
and
bad ideas.
sometimes it is a
Believe it or
bad
not,
idea.
I have had bad ideas.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think that's so much of it is it's what you said, not siloing yourself. It's about being open to other people's ideas and opinions because realistically, I have things I do on a daily basis that work really well. I have
yeah.
systems, I have habits, I have things
Hmm.
that really help me move forward in my life. But that's what works for me.
Right.
Someone from the outside, this is why coaching is important, right?
Hmm.
Might look and go, but what if you did this? And
Yeah,
that could be a great idea. It
yeah.
could be a terrible idea. But if I don't listen to it and if I'm not open to the
Hmm.
thought, then I would never grow. I wouldn't have the habits I have now
Right.
if not for listening to other people give me things to implement, right?
Right.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's that important.
Yep, absolutely. So, all right, let's review. So, the first one is reframing your thinking, and that's really about making sure you're setting yourself up that there has to be a change. So, the resiliency part of it, but also the adaptability part. They're different, but they do go hand in hand and they work together.
Yeah. Step two, embrace the minimum viable action. Don't solve the whole problem at once. Break it up into tiny tasks, make a quick 15-minute to-do list, and just start knocking things out one at a time to create momentum.
And the last one is build a support network, friends, colleagues, whatever, and use those for support, encouragement, but also use them for ideas and to challenge your thinking so that way you can grow and get better.
And that wraps up this episode of the Achieve Results Now podcast. Become a resiliennaire. That's somebody with a lot of
Nice.
resilience. I had to throw that. I love that word. I don't
I
know.
love it too.
Be resilient, be adaptable, share this with people, and we will see you on the next episode.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Hop over to our website at www.achieveresultsnow.com to get your free copy of our book, Ignite Results, 4 specific daily actions to help you achieve results now. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Achieve Results Now. Thanks for listening, commenting, and subscribing. Now get out there and achieve results now.